1 Timothy 2:8, it says, I desire therefore that men pray everywhere, lifting up holy hands without wrath and doubting. Lifting up holy hands without wrath and doubting. When God instructs us through his word, when he gives us instructions through his word to do something, and our response is, does it really take all that? Oh, I've got so much going on. That's just too much. I don't know about all that. It undermines what he is trying to get to us through our obedience. There are things that he is trying to release and reveal to you through your obedience. One act of obedience can break the cycle of something off of your bloodline for generations. One act of obedience over these next 21 days can break the cycle off of your bloodline for generations. Our physical obedience brings spiritual release every time. Our physical obedience brings spiritual release every time. So if lifting the hands brings victory in the Old Testament, what would fasting and prayer do under the new covenant, as Jesus showed us his example of 40 days of prayer and fasting? If we follow him, our physical obedience will bring spiritual and supernatural release, especially when it's done with saying, well, God, it's not convenient. When we try to bring God down to the area of our convenience, we miss the whole act of what he's trying to release. When somebody says, does it take all that? Yes, it takes all that because God said it does. Mark 9:29, so he said to them, this kind can come out by nothing but what? Prayer and fasting. This kind comes out by prayer and fasting and prayer. In the modern church, we have reduced it all down to feelings, intellect, and not physical action. I feel like I'm humble, so I don't have to bow. It's just an example. God knows my heart, so I don't really have to have a prayer life. He knows my situation, so I'm not going to be challenged in my giving. I have faith in my heart, so I don't need to take a risk. It's inside of me. That's the only place it's staying. And God is saying, there are times where you're going to have to step outside of your box. Times you're going to have to step outside of what's comfortable. Everything gets reduced to the internal, so there is no outward manifestation. Then we hear, I tried it, but it didn't work. But if you told your husband or your wife you loved them on the inside but never showed it on the outside, I'm sure they would start to question your love at some point. And sometimes God requires that physical act of obedience before he releases a spiritual reward. Fasting is one of those acts of obedience. There are times where God requires of us a physical action. Somebody say a physical action. I know I'm saying it over, but I want to be sure we get it. A physical action. Why? Because there is a connection between the physical action here and the spiritual action of heaven. We are not natural beings having a spiritual experience, but we are spirit beings having a natural experience. And within that experience, we have to steal away from the world. We have to disconnect from the world and from the natural to connect and reconnect with God. And fasting is one of those acts of obedience and disciplines that God has given us to connect and to reconnect with him. Your ears will be sharper when you begin to fast. Your voice will be stronger when you begin to fast. Your seeing will be better when you begin to fast. I don't know how many of you have done it in times past. It's amazing when you push away from the table after about day 3, all of a sudden you get a new strength. It's like, man, I haven't eaten like I was eating, and all of a sudden I don't need that nap, or I don't feel so groggy when I wake up in the morning. There's strength that comes with it. It's the way that God has set it up. It is a physical act that releases spiritual reward, which opens the release of favor. It opens vision. It opens healing. It opens provision. It opens miracles. It opens ideas. It opens help. It opens up protection. There are angels, as we said, on assignment that are ready to go to work for you. Now, of course, we're not talking about getting into, worshiping angels and all that. That's not it. That's foolish. The Bible is clear on that. But it's equally foolish to ignore their existence. And when you fast and pray, you release God's supernatural power and the forces of heaven to move on your behalf. Are y'all following me? So we've spent so much time, giving credit to the enemy. We spend a lot of time in this angel field giving credit to the enemy. I've heard, in a lot of churches, higher levels means higher devils. Anybody heard that before? That statement to me just really glorifies the devil. It's like I don't want to go too high because the enemy he might know who I am. I just want to stay here in this same complacent place. God, don't try to stretch me into anything else because I don't want the devil to know who I am. But remember, who is protected more on the battlefield? Is it the person that just got started, the new soldier, or is it the 5-star general? Is it the one who's been saying, God, I want to go deeper in you. I want to go further in you. The truth is, higher levels in God means that you have stronger angelic visitation. The deal is, when you go higher in God, that means that you have higher protection from God. That means that you have divine protection from God. That means that it's surrounding you and your family, your children and your children's children. The greater one is working on the inside of you. The greater God trusts you with the assignment that he has for your life, the greater the protection. So it doesn't really matter what the enemy tries to throw at you. You know God protection on all sides. Come on, somebody say, I'm covered, I'm covered, I'm covered, I'm covered. Come on. And this is why the enemy challenges us so much. This is why he's challenged so many of us last year, and so many of us haven't been able to see as God would want us to see. And that's why I challenged you in saying, see what the Lord has done. Come on, begin to prophesy into your new year. Begin to speak into your new year, to dream big, to go higher. Don't think small. Where God is wanting to take us, it's going to take you thinking outside of your box. It's going to take you moving outside of your comfort zone. And oftentimes, God has not been able to get to his body and to his people. He hasn't been able to get ideas to us because you try to bring it down to what's within your human reasoning. You try to download it in outdated systems. But God says, I'm calling for my people to raise up download that he wants to give you. You'll be able to break through it with fasting and prayer. Fasting and prayer opens up your spirit for God to give us his capacity. Come on, in computer terms, many of you you've heard this before. Your RAM. He's giving you more gigabytes. He's updating the drive from analog to high. So no longer will we continue to try to ask God to download things in outdated material. No longer will we try to ask God to download over us in outdated systems. God says, is this the fast that I have called for you? And as you begin to fast and as you begin to seek my behalf, because God says, as you begin to sacrifice in the physical, spiritual peace. I'm almost done. Daniel 10. Many of us are familiar with this. What you do in fasting affects the unseen world. What you do in fasting affects the unseen world. Daniel 10, 2 through 3. If those days I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks, 21 days, 3 full weeks, I ate no pleasant food, no meat or wine came into my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all till fulfilled. Daniel 10 and 11. Daniel 10 and 10. And then it says, and suddenly a hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. Why good trembling? O Daniel, man greatly beloved. Verse 3, it says that he took no pleasant food. He ate no pleasurable or desirable foods. Became a vegetarian. For those meat eaters, those carnivores, I'm in the bunch. But the Daniel fast, vegetables, things that are from the earth, fruits and vegetables. We put the sweet aside. We put the bread aside. We put the sugar aside. Oh, we need for that bread. We're going to be all right. Come on. We put the bread aside. We put the sugar aside. Time of consecrating ourselves and hearing and fasting before the Lord. They ate no, because people always say, well, it's like meat. Trust me, I've been on all type of fasts throughout my years of ministry, throughout my years of marriage. And about week 3, we started going, and we now feel like we can be vegetarian for the rest of our through the freezer aisle. Well, this says it's like meat. It says it's all natural. That ain't natural. If it's in there and it's right, don't get quiet on me. That's all right. I just busted some bubbles. That's totally. Y'all gonna love me again on January 29th, right? All right. So, verse 3, ate no pleasant food, ate no pleasurable or desirable food, became a vegetarian. Daniel 10:11, greatly beloved is the same word. He says, oh, greatly beloved Daniel. It is the same word described as desirable. Desirable. Greatly beloved is the same word described as desirable. So what am I saying? He says, I ate no pleasant or desirable bread, and the response from God was, oh, Daniel, man greatly desirable. There is a difference between God's love and his favor. Favor, well, let's start with this. Love is unconditional. God's love is just, it's available to everyone. It's free. You can't earn it. It's right here for us. We can always abide in his love. He gives it to us freely as his children. Favor is initially given to us as a gift, but its increase in our lives is dependent upon our stewardship by what we do to gain God's favor. This is a relational journey, because some people say, man, they just always seem like they just got favor. They just, but you don't know the sacrifice. You don't know the obedience. You don't know the things that they have gone through in order to receive the grace and the touch of favor of God. So favor, it's given to us. Some people, you're like, they just got saved. How they get all that favor? They walking in that initial favor, but when things start to get deeper, God says, I want this relationship with you now. Are you willing to sacrifice this? Are you willing to remove yourself from this for a period so that you can obtain a greater weight of my glory? Is this too deep? Am I going too far? I hope this is making sense. Favor is initially given to us as a gift, and its increase in our lives is dependent upon our stewardship by what we do to gain God's favor. Are you saying God has favorites? We are all his favorites. Somebody say, I'm his favorite. I'm his favorite. But in a relational journey, there are things that are shared with those that spend time with you. There are things that are shared with those that spend time with him in his presence over those that don't. You'll learn things about people that you spend more time with than you would if you don't spend time with them. So how can I give you favor if you don't spend time with me? There are certain things, yes, that you have as rights, as heirs. When you so there are certain principles and things that are in law and in motion. I get that. I hope y'all are following me. But there are certain realms of favor that come when you know who God is. There is favor that is released with obedience. There is favor there is provision that is released when we are obedient to what he's asked us to do. The love of God is absolutely full and free, but the favor of God does not come in its fullest until you do certain things. You can't buy God's favor, but you do not get more of God's favor without sacrifice, without stewardship, without obedience. Come on, this is some of the stuff that we don't want to hear in church anymore, but I'm going to say it. Just give me later. The increase comes from obedience and sacrifice. Daniel's story is a story of favor. Here he is feeling like the weight of the world is upon him for his family and for the people and for his nation. And in desperation, he says, I will push away from the table and eat no desirable food. He says, I'm pushing it away for a period of 3 weeks, and said, I am going to seek the Lord with all of my heart. I am going to engage into his presence. The Lord's response to what he did, from eating vegetables and having water and having fruit, he didn't complain about it. He wasn't trying to, figure out how to get around it and all that kind of stuff. He said, I'm going to feel this, God, because I know there's something that you're wanting to break through. He said, I'm giving it up. And God's response was, oh, Daniel, one who is found to be greatly desired by me. What it must feel like to be greatly desired by God. Come on, this is a picture of unusual increase. This is a picture of unusual favor because of Daniel's unusual sacrifice. And many of us have just tried to jump ship into things and say, God, I don't see why it's not happening for me. I believe this is the year of this, that, and the other. But God says sometimes it's going to take an unusual sacrifice on your behalf. And as you begin to move into that place of unusual sacrifice, you will see unusual favor. You will see unusual blessing. You will see unusual promotions. You will see unusual breakthroughs. Come on, some of y'all are getting quiet. But it takes this kind of move in order for us to see real breakthrough. I have found that whenever it seemed like I was in a place where I wasn't as sharp as I needed to be, where I wasn't hearing God as clearly as I wanted to, the second I push away, all of a sudden that prophetic begins to flow. There's a hearing of his voice that becomes clearer. As we begin to push away, we begin to see breakthroughs. And this is why the enemy fights us so hard in this area of fasting. Let me tell you this, your body is going to want to fight you tomorrow. Your body is going to want to fight you. It's going to want everything that you drive by. All of a sudden, everything that you crave, all the above. It's like all of a sudden your nose goes to the next level. You smell Popeyes 3 blocks away. You smell the fries way down the way. Come on. But there's something about that sacrifice. Come on. You got, all of a sudden, you got this mile sense. Like, it's like a whole mile. Somebody barbecuing. Who is that barbecuing in my neighborhood? There's a whole 5 miles down the way, but you can smell it. God says when you do a physical act of obedience, that ignites spiritual release. Somebody ought to say, I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready. Come on, say, I'm getting ready. As the TJ says, get ready. Come on, say, I'm getting ready. Because with that release will come supernatural favor, will come uncommon miracles, will come increase, will come restoration, will come harvest, will come manifestation. Somebody ought to praise God right now in advance for what God wants to do. I believe that in times of fasting, there are strategic moments that come where there is a challenge that's given. This is a challenge that's given to us as a community, a challenge that's given to us as a body corporately. In this instance, this is us doing this as we're building community, fasting together as a community, consecrating the top of the year, believing God for breakthrough in all areas of our lives. This is, again, this is nothing forced. Nobody's saying, hey, if you don't do this, you're not going to be blessed and all that kind of stuff. You're not saved more because you're fast. You're not more holy because you fast, But this is a divine challenge that God gives us in the Bible. And at strategic moments in our lives, he wants a divine partnership with us. This is a divine partnership ask that he has given us. We are on a relational journey with God. And fasting opens up the depth of our spirit to commune with God on another level. It allows us to go deeper with him. What you do physically is going to release spiritual things. The physical response of Moses, raised hands, had heaven move on his behalf. David, dancing before the ark of the Lord with all his might. Come on. The response was recognized by heaven. The lifting of the hands in the sanctuary, some feel it's not important, but God says, out of your obedience, I determine if I release spiritual rewards. My body is not my own. Therefore, I present my body as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, according to Romans 12:1. This is not just knowing it on the ends, but this is manifesting it on the outside as I enter into a partnership with God. In times and seasons of fasting, when I fast physically, it impacts the unseen world. Come on, somebody say, things are moving on my behalf. Things are moving on my behalf. You can have children under demonic influence, and your prayer through your time of fasting break it off of their lives. Children dealing with things that where, you're like, I'm believing God that my family will be saved. Things will begin to break off of their lives as you begin to pray and fast. Daniel said, I set aside food that was desirable. And it said he mourned for 3 weeks. He mourned for 3 weeks. Now, mourn was not necessarily, doesn't necessarily mean that it means that he didn't have the greatest attitude. Now, I pray that we would, I see you next week, that your attitude would be good. But, it said he didn't have the greatest attitude. If you fast to where you are really feeling it, not eating all the time, trying to just keep yourself full on, because sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I'm doing good, but you just overdoing it with the fruits and vegetables. Like every time, you got the whole bag of nuts, it's like 10 pounds, and you just always eat. No, there's a measure of it that I believe that God wants us to feel a little bit of it, because when you feel it, that's the moment you need to begin to pray. When you start to feel like, okay, God, I'm dealing with a little hunger, this is when you begin to open up your Bible and you begin to speak in tongues and you begin to use your heavenly language. You begin to draw closer to God. We begin to feel it a little bit differently. That means we need to dig a little bit different. This is a personal journey, y'all. This is a personal journey with God, but when you're feeling it and when your flesh is trying to fight you, there are going to be moments where your flesh wants to fight you. It wants to fight you to reheat that thing in the oven. Stop. No one will know. Nobody will know that I can have a cheat day. French fries, they're that's from the earth. They're potatoes. I can have French fries. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know some of y'all been fasting with French fries for years. Let me tell y'all. I done tried it. I didn't know. It is a vegetable, but it's the fry, because most you're not doing it in 100% olive oil. Air fryer, okay, and maybe air fryer. Oh, y'all got some ways. I'm hearing it. Some of y'all already try. I hear it coming all out. What else? What else can that air fryer do? These light chicken nuggets, but it's from the ground. Ketchup, Pastor, it's tomato sauce, just crushed up. It say organic on it. I don't look at all the okay, I'm sorry. That's why I said it's a relational journey. We're not here to try to, He's gonna stretch you these weeks. I sense that he's gonna stretch some of us. It boils down to how deep do you want to go? It boils down to how deep do you want to go? When it's beating your flesh. I remember Kelly's grandmother, when she was living with us, she would always fast. And I'd be like, Grandma Ruby, you're not going to eat. She'd like, die flesh. She was all the way in on she would go in. I remember one time she had fasted for, it had to be over 40 days. She had been fasting, and she was breaking some stuff off her life. And Kelly got to cooking. She was cooking some greens and some other things in the house, and she hadn't cooked that way in a long time. And Grandma Ruby, I said, I wish y'all could have met her. She came shuffling around the corner, and she was looking in, trying to see what was going on. And I said, Grandma Ruby. She turned around and she go the other way, as the smell was filling up the house. You could smell the whole. And so she so she came back around about an hour later, and we still sitting there and going back for seconds and etc. And she walked up and she said, well, I think I could just have a little broth. Can I just have a little bit of this broth? And so we poured her a little bit of broth, and she went back to the back, and about 10 minutes later, she came out, and then we were all still eating, and we like, Grandma Ruby, we're so sorry. We don't want to, we don't want to make you stumble. Oh, no. I believe the Lord has called my fast to an end today. Grandma Ruby piled that thing of greens and chicken, sat down and ate like she had not been fasting for 40 days. Now, we don't want to break our fast like that. We're going to have to talk about how to transition back into some of that, but she was strong. God bless her. She was strong. But sometimes the Lord will ask you, he'll say, hey, within this 21 days, I don't want you to eat anything today. He's already telling me, son, get ready. I'm going to be asking you. I'm like, Lord, okay, strengthen me. But he says, some days I don't want you, there may be a group of days where I say, I want you to fit, even in the middle of having fruits and vegetables, I don't want you to eat anything. I just want you to drink water. I just want you to hear my voice. We have to be sensitive. Now, maybe he's not leading everybody like that, but there's a level of sensitivity that comes along with it. He's going to challenge some of us. He's going to stretch some of us. It said Daniel mourned. He turned away the desire and has become extremely desirable by God. He turned away and he has become extremely desirable by God. I'm about to wrap this up here. Daniel 10 and 11 through 12. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, man greatly desired, understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. While he was speaking this word to me, I stood trembling. Then he said to me, do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard. I have come because of your words. I have come because of your words. I have come because of your words. Some of you are going to release things over these next 21 days, and the angel is going to come because of your words. God is going to move on behalf because of your words. In Daniel 10 and 13, it says, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, and behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia. There was a strong principality in this time over what is technically Iran that withstood the angel that was trying to get to Daniel for the answer, with the answer that he had prayed for. But for 21 days, Daniel stayed in a place of prayer and fasting. And the angel said, because you kept fasting and praying, one of the chief angels, which is Michael, came to help me. So we have the three angels. As I said, we already talked about Lucifer, who was kicked out, but the other two are Michael and Gabriel. So Gabriel is the one who carries the messages. Michael is the warring angel. Michael was sent to break through the enemy's resistance. I think this paints the clearest picture we are seeing into the unseen spiritual world when you persist with fasting and with prayer. The prayers that have been held up on some of your behalf, as you begin to pray and as you begin to seek the Lord over this next 21 days, you're going to begin to see breakthrough after breakthrough. You're going to see miracles, signs, and wonders. It said that it took 21 days. Some of you have